Happy Lunar New Year, everyone. So glad that you guys could join us for another episode here on the Teens for Business podcast. I'm your host, Ivan.
I'm Jack.
I'm Jackie.
Today we'll be talking about how culture, specifically the Lunar New Year, can impact our economy and even the global economy. Some little facts about Lunar New Year is that it is celebrated in many Asian countries like China and Vietnam, and well, today or tomorrow, whatever, it will be the year of the rabbit. Or if you're in the Vietnamese Lunar New Year calendar, it will be the year of the cat. And um, from what I've heard, it's the cat in Vietnamese because like when they spread the Lunar New Year from other Asian countries, like the word for rabbit during that time sounded really like cat, and then it became cat. But anyways, the big major um i- impact in the economy would be probably the culture of the Lunar New Year, as like many people will decide to go home and see their parents or see their other family members and basically leave wherever they usually work and then go back to where their parents live. Um
Uh,
yeah.
yeah. I think it's really interesting about like Lunar New Year, about like how long the history is. It just like it dates back centuries, and I know like the first recorded instance of a celebration was like in China, at least it was a long time ago. It was in like the Warring States period, which is thousands of years ago. And I think it's so interesting how like this continued tradition of like celebrating the Lunar New Year, which is based off of like moon cycles, not like the regular January, February, March calendar that a lot of people in the Western world go off of. So I think it's really interesting how like that continued culture has just followed into the years. And like Ivan just said, like there's a lot of stuff about the economy because it's such a big holiday that people celebrate. I don't know, what do you guys feel? But I think like in China at least, or in a lot of like Asian countries, Lunar New Year is probably like the biggest holiday that they
Yeah.
celebrate.
Yeah, definitely like the biggest. It's also like pretty interesting on how like everyone, like literally everyone, decides to set down their jobs and go see their families on
Yeah.
like these specific days. Like even when times are tough, like actually like this year, I know like many people here, where I live, like their parents at least, or like one of their parents are going back to China to see their grandparents, stuff like that. Even though like plane tickets, I don't know about plane tickets actually, but like the COVID situation in China is definitely not great, right? So I think it's amazing how like people can set aside those challenges and still value those family, spending time with their family in this holiday.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So for my experience in like for Lunar Year, for like I think in my sixth grade during the Lunar New Year, I actually went back to like China to like stick around with my family, hang out with them. And like every like time like before like on Lunar New Year Eve in the night, we always have like a huge dinner with like all our relatives, all our very close relatives, and we just like talk. And then after that, we turn on the TV and watch like the new Lunar New Year gala from the CCTV. And I feel like I feel like every year everybody like gets together, honors their like family traditions. It's like super it's like super fun, and it's like valuable that you get to like value your family. You can value your family, you can value like the family prosperity that you guys have lasted one more year. And also it's very interesting in an economic perspective because like um families like to buy like gifts. They give red envelopes out to to the children, and like they are like supporting each other like econ- econ- economically gift giving, but they're also like spending a lot, and it's also having like an impact on some of the businesses.
Yeah, like um especially like the infrastructure there also like especially in China has to be like able to handle this many people traveling during these times. So I also like this holiday also has like many um economical like what do you call it opportunities, right? And since like so many people are going to the airport or like the train station, I think like those are definitely great opportunities for small businesses or like businesses in general to sell like gift products, stuff like that. And like it probably like is a huge revenue, like huge part of percentage of the revenue for the entire year.
Yeah, and I feel that like, I mean, in 2021, Chinese people spent 821 billion yuan in China, like on generally catering and retail services to like that's just like in the culmination like the new year. So definitely we see that like spike in like spending like around the Lunar New Year for like all the celebrations and stuff.
Yeah,
Right.
because there's like a lot to celebrate, right? And like one part of, I think for me at least, Chinese New Year is being able to like go to a family's house or like a really close family friend's house to eat dinner there. I think that's like a pretty common celebration that you do with like your very close circle. And I think like those dinners aren't just like, oh, here's a chicken, let's eat. It's very much like, oh, let me prepare all of this stuff. And like I think that's something that really impacts the culture and like the economy because people are like they're spending a lot and also like I think when you're in the holiday spirit, this probably applies to like a lot of holidays, but
Yeah.
once you're in that holiday spirit, you're like, you know what? It's okay. It's the holiday. I can like splurge a little bit. It's okay if this is like $10 more expensive than normal. Like that also kind of just like fuels into the big economy boost at that point, which is really
Yeah.
interesting.
And then
Yeah.
like also like the culture of the New Year, like the gifting culture is like I remember learning about like during Lunar New Year you have to wear new clothes and wear new shoes. And then you get the red envelopes from like basically all your family members. So like especially like children being like the target of definitely the target of like New Year. I think like children and child related products like toys, whatever, clothes, shoes, I think those markets will have like an astronomical like astronomically like surge definitely because like children and they don't really know how to spend their money and they just got a lot of it during like the New Year. So it's like a huge opportunity for businesses and for the economy to utilize.
Yeah. Mhm.
And also
Um,
like Jack mentioned the what do you call it, the gala for Lunar New
Yeah,
Year.
the gala on the TV. I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. I think it does really similar to like whatever we have here, right? Like um like people watching the TV during New Year's. Well,
mhm.
and then like probably like football games, basketball games, like the major playoff games, major Super Bowl, like it's definitely very similar, right? Because like there's such a massive audience watching
Yeah.
TV at the same time.
Yeah, and I feel like on the business perspective of things, I feel like the advertising companies could like maybe say, oh, maybe we can advertise our product or our service onto like such a big like TV service with like such a big reach. I definitely know that I think the CC like that Lunar New Year Gala is actually the most watched TV show in China like throughout the year. So I feel like it's definitely also like a business revenue opportunity for those companies that are advertising their products to maybe like strike a profit.
Yeah. I think it's because like also just like how it's so popular and it's not just like a one because like in the United States, some people, for example, don't really celebrate Christmas or they might not celebrate one holiday. But like in China, I think it's relatively unanimous of like, guys, it's the Lunar New Year. We're all like having this fun day. So I think it's like a very popular culture, more so than even like a lot of the big American days, like Super Bowl. Yeah, like most people know what it is, but that doesn't mean everyone really celebrates or watches it. But then in China and like other specific countries in like the Asian area, like they're all very like, okay, this is a unanimous thing about our culture. So it's like really interesting to see how like people come together and
Yeah, it's
benefit from
kind of
that.
like it's kind of like a holiday that everyone
Yeah.
probably would celebrate together. even when they're like probably like religiously different or like
Yeah.
ethnically
Yeah.
different, they all like celebrate unanimously celebrate this holiday. Like somewhat like Independence Day, like July 4th in the US, but like on a much larger scale, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah.
And then
I mean,
like also like people like give up work, stuff like that. Like it's incredibly important.
yeah, it's like very unanimous and like very, I can't really even think of a holiday in the United States. Maybe like regular New Year, but that's only like you take a couple of days off. And then, but speaking of like taking days off, because in China, like you, at least in China, it might be other countries too in Asia, but specifically speaking in China, like you get 10 days off just because of the New Year or Lunar New Year, which is really interesting because that's a long time period compared to like my winter break in the United States. That's much longer than it was. But there's also like a really big business impact because of like that 10-day holiday shutdown because like China is so big in like the exporting world. So like if they shut down for 10 days, that's like everyone else is like, okay, well, so there's like this 10-day gap and like what do we do about that? And obviously 10 days in the grand scheme of things isn't like enormously important, but like it's still very important to consider for like businesses being like, okay, so we know this is going to happen, so we can't like if something goes wrong, like we have to account for that. I think that's interesting to see in like the business world and like the impacts of that 10-day shutdown.
Yeah, but like I also like thought about like since there's such a big surge before and probably like during like afterwards the new year, I think like this slowdown will probably be offset kind of because like there's a surge and then there's like a slowdown and another surge, right? So I think it'll be kind of offset by like people just like generally people just buying stuff.
Yeah, I also agree with that because like I mean I feel like also like on like the domestic front, because everybody's buying so much, I feel like China's GDP would increase a lot. Like,
Yeah.
well, also
Yeah,
on the other hand, their like net export would decrease because like everybody's like having a break.
exactly. It's talking going back to like the gala, like uh, from my experience, like the advertisements are usually not like the Super Bowl when they're like super flashy and they do like this like mega skit with like 15 celebrities. It's not like that. I think the advertisers mostly on the gala are like scan this QR code and have a chance at winning this random thing that we sell.
Yeah.
And like, I think it's really interesting how like it's so different than like stuff you see on TV here in the states, right? Because in the states it's like flashy, tons of dollars in like tons of dollars into spending, recording, like inviting like guests, famous guests. But in the gala, it's like kind of relying on audience participation.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I also feel like because like Lunar New Year like is associated with that like prosperity, like monetary prosperity, obviously. So I feel like a lot of these like advertisements are like built around that idea, and it's like it's kind of like a lottery thing. I feel like because like if you win like the lottery, you can be like prosperous for the long term, I believe, and like just to like reinforce that idea, I think like companies like are I mean, the Chinese companies that are advertising are like targeting that, so they can like get like they can get like more people involved into it. Probably.
Yeah, actually, no. Actually, thinking about it, like they often call it like 抢红包, like you're kind of like competing for that
Oh,
red envelope, right? I think that's like the culture the advertisers are trying to utilize, right? Like, it's not like, I think it's not like you're winning the lottery in a sense. It's more like the culture of red envelopes, but like you're not going for the money, you're going for the fun. It doesn't
I
really
think
matter. Yeah,
it's more so of like the advertisers and the companies being able to capitalize on this like gamification strategy because hongbao or like they're just for anyone who doesn't know what hongbao are, it's just basically like you give people money in a red envelope and usually it's like older people giving younger people it, but like because it's so popular, like the culture of it, like especially with advertisements, is like the company giving it to the common person. But anyways, I think it's like more so like a gamification. It's like, hey, you get money, or like, hey, you might be able to get some money. It's like a little game to play. And I think like throughout that game of playing it, you also like see the company. So it's like kind of having that outreach. So that's like more so I think about what it is and how like they can capitalize on like people's like the psychology of their customers and being like, oh my god, hey, like I can get some
Yeah.
money. And also like in WeChat, I don't know if you guys have seen this before, but like in like little servers or like chat group
Group
chats,
chats.
there's like someone having like someone's like, oh, happy new year, guys, and like send their home ball out into the chat. And then it's kind of like a game to see who can get the most money or who
It's
can
like
like,
random.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And also my experience with that, I actually did that this morning because my relatives in China, they were like about to celebrate the New Year while I was waking up. So I was like trying to like get those red envelopes as like fast as possible. I feel like in those like traditions, like with like online sending money, like whoever, for at least for me, how it works is that whoever gets the most money is the next person to send out like the next red envelope. So it's like a pleasant, like friendly exchange of like money. It's a little bit of a competition, but overall, I just feel like it's just a way to like celebrate
Yeah.
money, celebrate prosperity, which is obviously a huge value of like the Chinese New Year and Lunar New Year since the very beginning of its like since when it started.
Yeah, that's like a good point because I don't think anyone, or there might be, but I think most people at least aren't looking to be like, oh my God, I made $23 in revenue from this holiday. I think it's more so like, oh, that's so fun, like a good holiday spirit, good luck for this year, and things like that. But that like exchange of money kind of like it makes you feel better. So like again, like it's the holidays and people are like, yeah, let's go buy stuff. And I mean, I know like a lot of people do it on WeChat, so it's like a boost for WeChat too.
Yeah, it's like kind of like Christmas here. I think that's like the closest equivalent we see in
Yeah.
the States, right? Because like consumers are buying gifts, like buying tons of gifts. Like tend to see like this boost in the economy right before Christmas, and then
Yeah.
like people are wearing ugly sweaters, whatever. It's kind of like that, right? Everyone in China is wearing like red because that's like the cultural color for Lunar New Year, and then like they're giving money to relatives, friends, and people are using that money buying gifts, stuff like that. And then you're seeing a lot of like the Lunar New Year themed kind of products going around definitely during this time.
Yeah. Like
Yeah,
red, like you mentioned, Ivan, red is such a big deal. And like definitely under no circumstances should anyone wear black. I think that's like interesting, like the color like
Yeah.
theory in
it is.
that.
Mhm.
Something funny is like I think there's this thing of like wearing red underwear or something for good luck.
Oh
I
yeah.
think wearing red and like just general colors in the Lunar New Year are like just like generally considered lucky. And I feel, and like I read an article just a few like hours ago that they were like talking about like how wearing black in the New Year is like related to like death and bad luck. So definitely do not recommend like wearing black. And I don't think they also recommend wearing white either. I think they're like strictly like red, orange, maybe a little bit of yellow as well. So like that's for like good
Yeah,
luck.
definitely those colors are like also like yeah, there are like tons of references to, like gold, like money,
Mhm.
like if you're wearing red, there's probably like gold outlines.
Yeah.
It's just
Hmm.
it's like this kind of trend you see in clothing, definitely. And like
Yeah.
also like in the States, not in like Asian country, in the States, they're definitely also capitalizing on this kind of date, year, time of the year, definitely. Like when
Yeah.
in Costco, I'm pretty sure like they're selling like trees and like flowers and stuff.
Mhm.
They're not really culturally accurate. Like I think like when my mom went, like she saw yellow flowers, and then in college, like Chinese culture is like yellow flowers kind of mean like you place them on a dead person, like funerals. You use them in funerals. So it's kind of inaccurate, but like it's definitely you can definitely see businesses capitalizing on this time of the year.
Yeah. I think it's also like two things. So like one, there's also like a lot of like food products. Like if I go to Costco right now, I don't know about you guys in California and Chicago, but like if I go right now to the Costco I have, there's probably a lot of like Chinese themed little pastries out there. I don't think they have like the holidays exactly correct or anything like that, but there's a lot of like
There's an
red
effort made.
packaging. What?
There's an effort made.
um, there's like just like a lot of like red packaging and like little holiday treats, and they're like, oh my God, New Year, Lunar New Year, go celebrate that. But yeah, and I think like also in the United States, just because the United States isn't like completely like isolated from China, there's still like a bunch of like there's a lot of Chinese people and like Asian people, and like if you go to Chinatown specifically, or like Korean, do Koreans celebrate it? I'm not sure, but like other Asian like towns or like setups for that, they're probably like all celebrating that. And if you go to like any of the stores, they have like little stuff hanging in the windows. And so I think like even though we're technically two different countries, that like impact of culture translating over into another country is like really interesting to see, because that also impacts how like the Chinatown economies and like the shops of that, and just also the United States.
Yeah, I agree with that. I definitely see a similar trend in my local Chinatown. Like all the shops are decorated in like red colors, posters with like Chinese characters, like celebrating the Lunar New Year. And I feel like that's like the case with like all different like Chinatowns in the area. And even like the homes of like the Chinese families that live, they like normally like decorate their windows, they put some posters on their windows, they put some cultural like posters all over their walls. And I feel like definitely we can see like even though we aren't like living in China, but like everybody's like all the Chinese, some of the Asians in like America and all the other countries, they're also like enjoying this like spirit, and they can definitely feel the spirit even though they're like thousands of miles away from like the mainland where it's being celebrated.
Yeah, I
Also,
definitely agree.
also like on the I think somebody mentioned like the topic of food. Like my parents, I feel like most of your parents have also like done this, but around like the Lunar New Year time, like you like order or go to like Chinese restaurants to like get like a lot of food and then take it back
Yeah.
home. It's for the big meal on the Lunar New Year Eve. And and I've also seen that trend in like China, where like there's like huge parties of like families are like coming to like restaurants to like have that like dinner. And I feel like for on a business perspective, these like restaurants and like food producers, I guess, can like capitalize off of this by like cooking a little bit more.
Yeah, I've always like been curious about that, because like if you go to China right now, so like in Shanghai especially, like a lot of like the shops, restaurants are closed because the workers are like, yeah, I'm gonna go see my family. Like, come on, be real. But then I was like, what if you stayed? Like, do you think they would be able to make a lot more money because of like they're
Well,
one of the only
well,
restaurants open? Or do you think
I'm
like that's a sacrifice that they're probably not willing to make?
I'm probably sure, like based on what my parents have said when they were in China. I haven't been to China like during Lunar Year time, but based on my parents' experience, like it's the city is basically empty.
Yeah, yeah.
So I
Hmm.
don't think having your business open would lead to more
Well,
demand consumption during this time.
I don't think it's like more so like empty, because if you're in the big cities, like you live there, because obviously there's like people whose families, let's say, like are in a rural area, but like you, like just to use Shanghai as an example, like if you worked there, but your family was in like a more suburban area, like you would go back, but that doesn't mean that there aren't any like
Oh,
Shanghainese residents there, right? So like
yeah,
I
yeah.
was
They're
thinking,
like a lot of the big city like residents are actually like they moved there for like work or something. Like I'm pretty
yeah.
sure like that's like a major trend among at least big city in China is like people from rural areas are like it's kind of like urbanization. Like people from rural areas are like moving to urban areas for work and then to send money back home. Like that's like the general trend for
Oops.
these past couple of decades. So like a lot of people, like at least 20-30% of people are going back to rural areas to seeing their families.
And
Yeah,
yeah,
but
you mentioned that like trend, but I feel like from my experience, like we found like a pretty local restaurant, and it was pretty packed in there, to be fair. And there were like still people that were working, enjoying the holiday spirit with us. But I don't know, these might be just like the local people who are like doing the job and also celebrating at the same time. I feel like it is definitely doable. By the way, I when is that like 10-day period? Does it start like before the New Year or right on
I
the New
think
Year?
I think it's like on the day, right? Like one day before New Year, like that's when all the celebrations start, right?
Yeah, there's like a lot of traditions that start on Lunar New Year Eve. I've normally had my like big dinners around like Lunar New Year Eve, and then like yeah, and I feel and that's what I had when like that's what happened when like the restaurant was like packed. But then after like the Lunar New Year, it's just mostly family stuff, and normally we've been around the shops in those like local shops going like shopping and stuff, but generally like there's definitely less people because everybody's like been going out to their
Yeah, I
families and stuff.
think like New Year is like a series of holidays, not like Christmas when it's like 2 days and you're done. It's kind of like I'm like I personally haven't really studied this, but I definitely know like for the 2 weeks after Lunar New Year, there's going to be like each day is dedicated to what I know. Like the last day of the New Year is there's like traditions like the start celebrating the end and the start. So it's like a long series of holidays. There's that it's like all culturally significant. That period is just culturally significant. So like especially like, I'm pretty sure like the surge of people trying to go back home occurs the day before New Year's. I think that's when it actually starts. I'm pretty sure.
I mean,
Yeah,
I
and
guess that makes sense, right? Like they go back the day before, so like on
Yeah,
that day they can start celebrating.
yeah. Like especially in Gala, like they have tons of skits or like stuff referencing that journey back to see their parents. Like that's definitely like a major theme in like TV during this time.
yeah, I definitely agree with that. I feel like also like I know you mentioned like going home like a lot. I feel like again like tying it towards a business thing and maybe introducing a new field like public transit can definitely see like a lot of like a surge of like revenue because like everybody's using it to like go home. The Chinese government actually this year expects around 2.1 billion domestic journeys over a 40-day period around like the Lunar New Year, and like that doesn't include like foreigners that are like Chinese from like foreign countries that are coming back to like also see their families. So yeah, definitely airlines, train lines, even like bus lines are definitely they can definitely see like huge revenue from like the surge.
Yeah, like train lines, I think. Because just so like, because public transportation, I think from my experience in China, is a lot more about like, hey, there's a bus here, or like you take the subway. But it like if you're going from China or if you're going from like a big city like Shanghai to like a more rural place, you can't really get there by pure bus or like pure like subway. It's usually like you take a train, and like those train sales probably have like are really good and like really high. And I know like a lot of people like they have to purchase tickets like before because like you know you're going back and like everyone knows that they're going back. So it's like, okay, you know what, I just might get my tickets like as early as possible.
And I
Even though like
feel yeah,
yeah.
also I want to feel that like I feel like the trains and airlines get huge popularity because of the speed. You can't just like I feel like technically you can drive like to see your like family, but that takes a long time. That'll take like 1 or 2 days. Well, high speed rail, that's like a new technology. That's like a huge technology in China, and like people can like take like just a few hours to get from place to place. I feel like from Shanghai to Beijing, it's only like 5 or 6 hours, and that's like definitely a huge improvement over like driving. And I feel like also the high speed rail is also a big improvement over like the airlines because like sometimes airlines you could like I mean airlines they would seem a little bit faster, but like all like the setup, like the like getting everybody on board, that also like takes a lot of time.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
not
it's also like cost. Sorry, Ivan.
yeah.
It's also like cost Because like going on an airplane at the end of the day, like most people would think it's probably more expensive than going on a train. So it's like if the because most people aren't really commuting from Shanghai to Beijing. It's usually like Shanghai to rural or like Beijing to rural or like Nanjing, wherever to like not another big city. So it's like taking a plane, you could do that, but it's also like taking a train is just cheaper, more efficient. You don't have to go to the
Yeah,
airport
there's
at
probably
2
like
a.m.
more infrastructure around
Yeah.
trains rather than airports or planes in places where people are actually wanting to go. Right? It's from like high density to low density. That's probably the trend. And then also like not like cars in China, not a lot of people have cars because it's not feasible, the traffic and like the, it's like actually like they make it harder to buy cars simply because the traffic problem is so insane. So not a lot of people actually would use cars or even have cars to go back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I, cars are definitely a lot slower than the proven methods of like travel in China. So definitely during like when I was in China for Lunar New Year, I definitely used subway and train and bus for most of my like travels. And I definitely, especially during like the time around the New Year, some people say like the cities are empty, but like actually like some people actually go to this to the city to like actually celebrate, and I feel like that's interesting. But that also means there's like a lot of traffic. And from my experience when I was there, like it took a while to get from place to place. It like on like the bus and even in the subway, there's like a lot of traffic. I remember those I had to like wait like 2 hours because like a bunch of trains were backed up because of something that happened. And like even not just that for subways, like I remember during when I was taking in the when I was in the Shanghai high subway, like during like the celebration time, the subway was packed. Like I almost didn't get I didn't I felt like my personal space was like invaded. And like it just like emphasizes like how much people like use like transit to like get from place to place. And like also like not just that, it also emphasizes like the importance of like going from like traveling during like the New Year time.
Yeah, um I like the takeaways of our discussion today. Like I think lunar like I've learned that Lunar New Year is like this just actually like thinking about it, it's like probably no equivalent to the Lunar New Year as in the States. Like it's like just on another scale on like economic opportunities, economic boom, business opportunities, and like just like culturally wise, there's probably not like this equivalent in the States.
Yeah. Like um that's something I was thinking about too, just like trying to equate it here, but there's kind of nothing really. Like you think about Christmas, but then it's like, okay, but if you're not Christian or like if you're Jewish, you don't really celebrate Christmas, or if
Well,
you're any
Hanukkah
other
is like
religion.
around the same time, right? I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure.
but you don't like, yeah, it's like, but you're
It's like
celebrating different
celebrating different
holidays.
stuff in the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have like different traditions, but like in China and like these Asian countries, it's very like unanimous of like, okay, we're all gonna come together and like have our family little gatherings and just celebrate the new year. And like in the US, like, yeah, you have like New Year's Eve, but that's more about like, oh, let's go party. It's not so much of like, okay, it's time for family. It's like time for peace and love. It's like, I don't know, it's kind of different because it's so widespread. And like just having like that big homogenous culture almost of like the Lunar New Year, it really gathers people up together and like has such a big effect on the economy because it's so big of a holiday. You really like just can't ignore the economic impacts of it.
Yeah, and another like takeaway I feel like about the economic impact that even though like China has like a 10-day holiday like shutdown with like exporting stuff to like other like economies, I feel like some of the economies like outside China may feel an impact, but inside China's GDP is booming, and that will definitely offset the net export that has declined since China Chinese employees are going on break.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like the culture definitely like it has a extremely big impact. Like the culture surrounding family, surrounding like fortune, luck, that definitely has a very big impact on the economy in general. So thank you guys for tuning in today as we talk about the impact of culture on the economy. And as through our discussion, we found that the impact, the culture impact is definitely has an extremely large and positive impact for economical growth and business opportunities. We hope that you have a great Lunar New Year, specifically the year of the rabbit or the cat. And we'll see you guys all next week as we continue our journey at Teams for Business.